Hey everybody, welcome back. It is the Razzball Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I am Beaton, joined by the Fantasy Master Authority himself. He was a dancing fool. I wish you guys had seen. I wish I had been recording pre-show so I could show it to you on YouTube. But Gray Albright, how's it going over there, Gray?
Good, man. I spent my All-Star break practicing my dance moves. Sadly, we weren't recording because I got an A++ in my dance classes. Actually, Cougs and I, before we got married, we took dance lessons in order to so our first dance could be on point.
Not embarrassing.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that was definitely. I'm sure everyone in attendance was like, "Wow, they really took dance classes." I'm sure that was the first thing they thought when they saw me dancing. They were like, "Yeah, okay." Can they get their money back? Yeah. So anyway.
Hey, growing up, you watch like James Bond and other films. You're like, oh, to get like, to get a lady, like I have to know how to do these complicated dances to classical music, or I'll never find one. Gray, I'll never find one. It won't happen. Every single woman knows how to do a waltz and every other, classical dance. I got to figure this out. The Charleston, I gotta figure out what all these dances mean.
To get a woman, yeah, man. That's the secret.
Drink scotch.
That's exactly the reason why you're single. You're dancing.
Yep, can't waltz. That's really what's wrong, Gray. It's clearly the issue.
You were like, thanks for swiping right. So what do I do? Well, I host a fantasy baseball podcast.
I'm gonna put at least three different sports above you.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I can't dance. Oh, the dancing? That was it? That was the reason why you're leaving? Oh, man.
Yep, I don't know how to do a waltz or a box dance. I apologize. What will I do, Gray? Luckily for you, that just means you might have a co-host.
Excuse me, but by next podcast, I want to see you horse trotting.
I mean, let's be honest, Gray. How many co-hosts have you lost to relationships at this point? Is it all of them?
Yeah. No, actually, I'm very happy you're single.
Makes recording time easy. Makes everything a little bit easier when there's not another voice to be heard in the conversation. But let's move on, Gray, because I'm sure all of our listeners are happily married, so they're getting nothing out of this conversation. Clearly, it's been a really weird July, Gray, and I wanted to open up with just a little bit of trivia here. Can you tell me the top 3 teams and runs scored here in the month of July?
Like
it's really weird.
Okay. Let me think.
2 of the 3 are going to be out of nowhere. One kind of makes sense.
I would say the Astros.
They are 7th.
7th. Wow. The Mets.
No, they are 9th.
Oh man, I'm getting worse. Okay, so
since you asked me, 3 more chances, Greg.
Okay, so since you asked me this question, I'm gonna assume it's the A's.
They are number 1.
Wow,
at 110 runs this month, Gray. They are.
Wow.
They're the only one in triple digits.
Wow. Wow. Okay. I'll say the Rockies.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah, no. I was going with the whole the opposite of
it's that's a good plan. There's at least one more that's completely on that path, Gray. I'll tell you this: it's not the White Sox because they haven't hit a ball in like 6 months.
I'll say I don't know the Marlins.
It's not the Marlins. I think it's the last of the awful teams, and that is Detroit. Detroit is third. Arizona second. That kind of makes sense. Oakland, Arizona, Detroit are your runs leaders so far in July.
Huh.
I was just looking at the streaming options and seeing, what teams are hot. Who do I need to avoid? And it's like, oh, I might need to avoid Oakland in Detroit. That feels really weird.
Yeah. That's
I don't know
actually,
that
I mean, that's
necessarily
for our purposes, that's actually a good point because, like, teams get hot and cold, and like I was hesitant about starting guys against the Yankees this past weekend, and they were fine. But then I was also on the other end. I was like, you know what? The Dodgers haven't been hitting, so I'm going to start Cutter Crawford, and that didn't work out as well.
Yeah,
So,
the Yankees are
21st. But sometimes my point though is sometimes teams, like even good teams, get cold, and even hot teams, and even cold teams get hot, and hot teams get cold. Yeah. So like the A's right now might be actually a hot team. So yeah, I would, I guess be somewhat hesitant about starting just about anyone against them. I would still start everyone against the Marlins though, even though I guessed them. I only guessed them because it seemed like you're going for opposite day. The Marlins
down there.
look awful. They look.
Yeah,
they are literally like they're Jazz and Berger are probably both going to get traded, or at least they're going to try and trade them. But I mean, even with Jazz and Berger, the Marlins are still pretty bad. So yeah, I would, whatever.
Like Lawrence Butler's hitting like 800. Brent Rooker is hitting home runs every time he steps to the plate. We'll talk about like the A's a little bit later. Actually, I have them on the schedule because it's just weird. Let's actually start with the A's while we're here. Jacob Wilson promoted by the A's, and in his first game out, he pulls his hamstring, and now he's headed to the IL. It doesn't sound like it's overly serious as of now, so let's assume he's back in, the minimum stay. Are you interested in Jacob Wilson when he's back?
Potentially. Yeah, I mean, I could see, because like his numbers, unfortunately, like he does look like a decent prospect, but unfortunately, he's like one of those kind of Jacob Wilson is one of those prospects that is really good for a hit tool. So those guys are always kind of a little bit difficult to recommend because, like, at the end of the day, like they might be 300 hitters, but if they're like a Luis Reyes 300 hitter with, very little power and very little speed, or Jacob Wilson supposedly has speed, but he hasn't really shown it. And he supposedly has a little bit of power, but he hasn't really shown that either. But, anyway, long story short is like guys with a hit tool first player is hard to recommend unless you really need average. And even then, if a rookie comes up and struggles a little bit, and he's super young, I mean, he's 22 years old. So if he comes up and struggles a little bit, it's like if you're not getting power and you're not getting speed, and you're also not getting average, if he struggles, then you're not getting anything, right? But if you need average, I could see it mostly at this point, at least, mostly in AL only. I'm not really interested in mixed leagues yet. And with the IL stint, it's kind of like a moot point because it's not like you're picking up Jacob Wilson in a 12-team mixed league just to IL him for, 2 weeks. That doesn't make any sense. So yeah, I mean, in an AL only league, sure. In a deep mixed league, if you have the IL room, I guess, but more than likely, I would probably hold off for now, unless you are desperate for batting average. Then, I guess go for it, even in a 15-team mixed league. But as of right now, I would say AL only. if you need average, and not just if you need average. I mean, AL only, you pick up anyone who's getting at bat. So assuming he was called up to play, so when he returns from his injury, he should play. I don't actually know the extent his hamstring strain. I didn't hear if it was like grade A or grade or first grade or what. I'm not a doctor. Grade A, like he's a piece of meat. I don't know if he's grade A prime, but beef Chuck. Yeah, Jacob Wilson's Chuck. I think he's fine for batting average, but not much else.
Yeah, and I think he will play. Zach Geloff can go sit down on the bench, or they can make room for him. I mean, it is a little more crowded than we ever thought Oakland would sound, given the stat that we led off with. But no, there's room for Jacob Wilson. I think there's a reason they brought him up. Even with Abraham Toro coming back, I don't think that was really going to affect Jacob Wilson's playing time necessarily, unless maybe they would platoon him a little bit here and there. But they're probably going to end up doing that to some extent, unless he really came out the gate hitting. But I'm with you. I think it's mostly hit tool, a little power, a little speed. It's not much of either, but, just enough to stay kind of interesting. He hasn't really had a lot of games at any level, so that's why I didn't really mention any stats. But in, 41 games this year, he has 7 home runs, 2 stolen bases. He hit .455 at AA and .398 at AAA. So as you mentioned, Gray, hit tool is carrying. He's never had a strikeout rate above 11%, even with those very small sample sizes. So could be interesting for like OBP leagues, or, if you really need average. But if he's going to hit the bottom of the A's lineup, you kind of need some counting stats for average only guys. Moving on, Gray. Ozzie Albies is out for, if not the rest of the season, most of the season. Nacho Alvarez Jr. has been promoted by the Braves in AAA this year in 48 games. He had 7 home runs, 5 stolen bases, 21-24. He had .336, .432, and .575. They also signed Whit Merrifield, which, makes you think he's probably going to get at least a utility role, if not this spot. He's hitting .199 this year with 3 home runs and 11 stolen bases in 53 games for the Phillies. Last year, he did hit .272 with 11 home runs and 26 stolen bases for Toronto. So it didn't look like he was quite done. But then again, this year, it's looked real bad. So where are you on the Albies replacements here? Are they worth a look in anything other than NL and deep leagues?
So I was so when you were talking, I was Googling Nacho Alvarez. And Nacho prospect. And then so I found Ignacio Alvarez, a Mexican swimmer who competed in the 1976 Summer Olympics. And for a brief moment, I thought that was him. And I was like, wait, how old is he?
Weird career path change.
Yeah. Oh man. So anyway, because I was looking up on Wikipedia, because he was Ignacio Alvarez and then he became Nacho Alvarez Jr. I was trying to figure out, was his dad Nacho or Ignacio? Because you can't just tag on Junior. Can you? You can't just be like, you know what? I'm going to become a junior like later in life. Like, I don't think it works like that. Like, I feel like if you're born a junior, you're a junior, but you can't just be like, oh, I'm 22 years old. You know what? I'm going to become a junior. Like your dad could put a stop to that, I think. Anyway, really, that's anyway, Ignacio Alvarez Nacho Jr. I don't know, Nacho Libre. Okay, so Nacho was he was really interesting to me when I was writing up my post for Sunday / going into Monday, because like his like he's young, like I mentioned. Well, he's only 21. I said 22. He's 21 years old. Recently became a junior. and he's got power and he's got speed, right? At least he did in the minors. The grades, the prospect grades don't exactly think that. But what they do think, and which is undeniable, is his plate discipline. Like Nacho doesn't like to swing at balls. Nacho's all about plate discipline. It just doesn't sound. It sounds like someone named Nacho wouldn't have plate discipline, but he does. Nacho absolutely has plate discipline. So his walk rate and his strikeout rate are so good for a 21-year-old in AAA that it seems like he seems undeniable. Like he was barely. I think he was top 5 for itch in the Braves prospect list, which isn't a great. It wasn't like one of the best team prospect lists, right? They don't have like the best prospects, but so I think itch would even admit that like Nacho's sort of come out of nowhere a little bit. He's moved up, I think. And his, he hit 342 in AAA as a 21-year-old. It's pretty good. It's really, I mean, honestly, I'm kind of impressed. So I was excited when he got called up, but then, the Braves went and signed Whit Merrifield, which is just so confusing. It's a bizarre move because. Like, why would you call up? And the Braves, thankfully, are one of these teams that just calls up prospects and then gives them like a 7-year, $5 million deal. And like, we'll see what happens. So the Braves are thankfully a team that calls up prospects, and they don't really worry about like starting clocks on arbitration, which is good. But also, I don't know why you would call them up and then get Whit Merrifield. Like that feels like, unless that's like a plan B in case Nacho doesn't work out. So they're like, they're going to try Nacho, and then Whit is going to be just playing as a utility guy. And if Nacho can't figure it out, then Nacho's going to be sent back down, and Whit Merrifield will end up being, the replacement for Ozzie Albies. But, with all that said, I'm really kind of interested in Nacho Alvarez. If he's able to, make good at all on this promise that seems like he's shown in AAA so far this year. I think he's, potentially has power and speed and a great hit tool, as I keep saying. So, I mean, there's not much not to like if he gets playing time, especially in like, I wouldn't go as far as saying 12-team mixed leagues yet, but 15-team mixed league and deeper, absolutely. I'm really kind of interested. I'm kind of happy that he got called up when he did, because he wasn't really available in Fab this past Sunday. So we'll get a week's look, like a free look this week on Nacho, and we'll see what what he's got to offer. His brother Jalapeno. No, sorry, it's terrible.
That would be messed up if like the oldest was Nacho, and then like you named each child, like gave nicknames to each child that were Nacho based. So you had like Pepper, and you had Cheese, I mean, Pepper and Cheese are names. You could go with this. What else, Gray? What else could we put in? Or Beef or Meat? You definitely nickname somebody Meat or Beef.
Carne Asada Alvarez Jr. I like if they're all just junior. It's just like, yeah, that's not actually how the suffix junior works, but okay. Junior.
Everybody is a junior.
Everyone's a junior.
It's like Oprah at Christmas. Let's just give one to everybody.
Here's my brother Nacho Jr. and my sister Susan Jr. Like, what? Wait a minute, Susan Jr. Yeah, everyone's a junior in this family. Don't ask. Anyway.
Hey, I mean, there's a couple of receivers in the NFL, Gray, that are named St. Brown, and the Saint literally was because the dad was like, Brown is just too boring. We gotta spice it up. These kids are going to be athletes. So, and their first names are Equidiminius and Amon-Ra. So,
wow, those are
he was going all out. All right, Gray, we're moving on here. Tyler Phillips has had a solid second start for the Phillies. He now has 16 innings, 15 strikeouts, 1 walk. That's a 25% K rate, a 1.7% walk rate. He's got a 2.81 ERA, an 0.88 WHIP. This year in AAA, in 92 innings, he had 4.89 ERA, 1.41 WHIP, 20% K rate, and a 9.5% walk rate. I mean, based off the AAA numbers, you'd say this has to come back down to earth. But what do you think, Ray?
Yeah, I would still think that. Yeah, I would think he has to come back down to earth. His numbers look terrible. He's actually he's the exact opposite of Nacho Alvarez. Obviously pitcher versus hitter. And Tyler Phillips isn't a junior, but Tyler Phillies. I think. Yeah, I think he's probably pitching a bit over his ability right now. Like he has really good. He's shown really good command so far in the majors, but it's not really like that. Doesn't seem like it's indicative of his past like 3 or 4 years in the minors. When he's also like this year alone in the minors, he had a 4.89 ERA. And a 3.6 walk per 9. So, I mean, not good command, not a great pitcher in the minors, let alone interested for him in the majors. Like I would be a little bit like hesitant even in an NL only. It is what it is. NL only, you do what you got to do. But in a mixed league, I would be super hesitant with Tyler Phillips. I mean, he actually – he went for, not like no one really has a ton of fab left. So it's not like he went for that much, but I think he went for like in the 20s out of, 1,000 in my leagues. So, that's something, right? Yeah, he went for between 17 and 25 in my leagues out of 1,000. So yeah, I honestly wouldn't mess with him now. I can understand like in a 15-team mixed league, for if you lost I don't know, say you just lost Reese Olson or you just lost Max Fried or if you lost a guy and you need someone, I can see it, I guess. But in most mixed leagues, I'd be worried about Tyler Phillips coming back down to earth with his minor league numbers are not backing anything up that he's done so far in the majors. And he also, he's 26. He's been in the minors since he was 17. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of a feel good story. I mean, I hope he does well, but I wouldn't count on it.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like anytime he's had, a reasonable amount of time at any stop in last few years, he sits in the mid to high 4s ERA. So if you do that in the minors, that's, high 4s, mid to mid 5s. I mean, that's not really what we're looking for. Right now, you could use him as he's maybe just getting away with the league not knowing him. He's definitely getting a little lucky with a 92% left on base. But you could ride it for a little bit if you want to, but I'm with you. I don't think there's really a whole lot here. I'm not necessarily going out and chasing, this last start from Tyler Phillips.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
With that in mind, and just thinking about how you're building roster and using roster space, Gray, would you potentially use that roster spot on one of the, soon to be returning injured guys over, a prospect or a Tyler Phillips type in, the guys like Kodai Senga, Clayton Kershaw, Robbie Ray, they're all coming back this week, or at least they're supposed to. Are you interested in them? I would assume they go over Tyler Phillips just for, the upside we've seen from them, but where do they actually fit in among starting pitchers for you rest of the season? Do they slot in like they haven't missed any time, or is there definitely going to be a little bit of penalty that, they're coming in this late in the season?
Well, like Kershaw, for instance, this guy, Clayton Kershaw, like he started in the minors in 2006. So for him just to be getting called up now, I don't know, man. What's he been up to, right? It's so hard to say. Well, first of all, Kershaw, Senga, and Ray, I think they should be rostered in every league. Whereas with like Tyler Phillips, I don't think he should be rostered in nearly any leagues unless it's a good matchup and you're really desperate. Okay, so that goes. So without saying anything more really on your question as far as the vets returning go, I would absolutely go with like Kershaw, Senga, or Robbie Ray. Right? Okay. So my other thing though is like Kodai Senga. Specifically about him, he's looked really bad in the minors. He's looked bad during his rehab starts. 5.23 ERA, a 6K per 9, like just awful, just really not good. It's a small sample size though. So I think the best case scenario is Kodai Senga returns. And, he was just maybe in the minors, it was like as if it was spring training and he was just trying to see, just getting loose and getting up to speed so he could come back to the Mets. The Mets, by the way, a team that has never disappointed when it has come to an injured pitcher coming back. The Mets have a long history of being terrific with starting.
Very clear. They never push people back too early. They're definitely wouldn't do that.
One of the best training staffs in the business, the New York Mets, the Metropolitans. That's it's actually short for Metropolitan Medical Group. They're really good. They're excellent. So Kodai Senga could potentially be working his way back and could be fine. I don't think so. I kind of feel like Kodai Senga was just holding out. Like some of these guys, well, I'll talk about Robbie Ray in a second, but Kodai Senga, I think specifically as in regards to him, I think he was probably, just delaying the inevitable, and it's not going to be good. Unfortunately, I know I've said this, I said that about Max Fried for about 3 months until his forearm started actually acting up again. Guys just can't. You can't just rest and rehab arm injuries. You kind of need to do something else, like surgery or surgery. Basically, those are your two options, and they're the same. And both options are the same, surgery. But Kodai Senga, I think, is attempting to come back from an injury that I don't think it's going to work. Okay, so I think Kodai Senga is likely going to come back, not look great, and then head back to the IL. Unfortunately, I hope it doesn't happen, but that's what I would imagine. Now, Robbie Ray, on the other hand, he is actually returning from surgery, so I don't have any problem with Robbie Ray. Like if I had excuse me, if I could trade for Robbie Ray, I would. If I could pick him up, I would. I think Robbie Ray could be fine. I don't necessarily know if he's going to be like, we see pitchers come back from, TJ all the time, and they don't always look great at first, but eventually they get there. And for what it's worth, Robbie Ray has looked really good in the minors in his rehab stints. Like, he's looked great. I would absolutely be in on Robbie Ray. I think he could potentially be a top 30 starter in the second half of the year. Like, there's, if he's healthy, which he should be because he had the surgery and he's working his way back from it, I think Robbie Ray could be great. Now Kershaw is a opposite of both, Senga and Ray. Whereas I think, Kershaw, I think he's so old at this point that what we're going to get from Kershaw is probably, he's more or less going to be, even though, he's in a better place than Senga. So if I had to rank him, I would say Robbie Ray, Kershaw, Senga. And I'm fine rostering Kershaw. I just think he's just so old at this point that you're probably going to get like a number 3 to number 4 starter from Kershaw, even though, he could have moments of like being solid. You're not going to see, I don't think you're going to see anything like, I don't know if you're going to see brilliance from Kershaw anymore. Like, think about like what you're seeing from like Scherzer or Verlander this year. Like, I think Kershaw can be solid. I don't think I would absolutely roster him. I just don't think we're going to see like, him be a second half Cy Young, but he could be potentially, I guess. But I like Robbie Ray a lot, and unfortunately not so much on Senga. And then Kershaw's kind of in the middle.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I actually think for this year I'm more in on Senga just because he hasn't had the surgery, so it's risky because it could just he could get injured and that's the end of it. Robbie Ray, I'm a little worried about just because he is returning from the surgery, which usually takes, even if you're healthy and you've done rehab, it usually takes some time to get back to your usual numbers off of that surgery. It's not usually an immediate thing. And while he has performed well in the minors, they've also been moving him up and down from single A to triple A, which, if he's dominating single A, that's not all that impressive, right? Like, it's single A ball. He should go down there and just beat the crap out of those guys. And Senga, the overall numbers look bad, but really it was just this last rehab start was real bad. But before that, it was really clean. So, before that start, you'd be like, okay, he was, he's ready to go. He allowed 1 earned in his 3 previous rehab starts. And then again, he gave up 5 earned in 3 innings in his last one. I'm not necessarily worried about that because they are just kind of getting back up to speed. So if they're not throwing everything or they're trying to work on something, it is what it is. I'm not overly concerned about it. I think I'm going with Kershaw 1 because we've seen him be the best most recently. Robbie Ray, I think I would go last, and then I guess that means Senga's 2. So long way around to rank them completely differently than you.
Okay. We will see then.
We will. Let's do a quick round of post All-Star Game hot starters, which means, yes, we're going to evaluate people on 3 games. But no, it's mostly people who've been doing well in July, Gray. We're going to play your favorite game that you may or may not understand still, which is Scientific Fact, Sex Panther, or I Don't Believe You. One of these days, I'm going to sit you down and just make you watch Anchorman over and over again, like 5 times in a loop, just taped to a chair, and then you'll get it, Gray. Let's start with Lawrence Butler. He is playing for the A's, who we talked about off the top, and he is absolutely killing it in July. He is hitting .385. He has 7 home runs, 2 stolen bases. His K rate has dropped down to 22.8%. He's been just absolutely hitting the ball hard all season. If you cap it at 100, or if you put the minimum at 100 batted ball events, which is around where he is at, he'd be 23rd in hard hit rate, top 30 in average exit velocity, 41st in EV50, and 58th in barrel rate. Is Lawrence Butler somebody we should be paying attention to, Gray?
Based on what you just said, yeah. Absolutely. I didn't realize he was doing that well. Yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is everyone on the A's is good.
Right now.
Everyone, yeah. Sacramento, man, they're gonna get one hell of a team. I can see now people going out in droves to the park in Sacramento to be like, yeah, let's go see Larry Butler. That's definitely something people will be saying in Sacramento. Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me a bit of what we saw from Zach Gelof last year. It looks like he's struggling with contact. So all the numbers you said are good. And I would, it's hard to deny those numbers because that means he's hitting the ball hard. So good things will happen. That sounds like a commercial for something where good things happen. I don't know. Where good things happen. Okay. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I think he looks to me like he's got solid power and speed, but he's not going to hit for a good average. So if if he gets just a little bit unlucky on BABIP and the average falls to 215, 225 range, he becomes a bit of a struggle to roster. So I could see. I guess what I'm saying is I absolutely would grab him now. I would be happy to have him in any mixed league right now. But I probably, unless I see some better contact or something, I'm probably going to be out on him. I guess it'll depend on the price a bit. But like I was out on Gelof this year, it seems it's going to be hard for me to be totally in on Butler, even though, I mean, they're going to be playing in Sacramento behind 50,000 raging fans every game. I mean, Sacramento's fan base is just gonna be exuberant. Okay, they will not be able to get a ticket to a game in Sacramento. I guarantee you. They are lining up right now as we speak at the ticker counters. I like Butler for right now. I don't think I'm going to like him in the big picture, though. I could see getting out on Butler next year, but that might depend on the price. Sacramento is going to be a small park, I think. So that could help with his power a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. He feels a little bit to me like power and speed, no contact, like Zach Gelof Part 2.
Yeah, I think he's hitting the ball a little harder than we saw Zach do last year. I think the change that I'm going to monitor to see if I'm going to believe this for next season is the K rate drop. He was like a above 30% K rate guy pretty much all season. And then in July, he's been under 23%. So if he can keep the K rate down and continue to hit the ball hard, then that becomes interesting. That becomes a lot more interesting than, guys striking out 35% and not taking any walks. So if he can continue that trend, then I think I might be in for next year. As for now, I'm grabbing him and I'm happy to see if that trend is going to continue while he just rakes. And if not, then you let him go. It's not a big deal.
Okay.
Also for the A's, Max Schumann. I mean, I feel like he's been in the waiver notes for me for like the last month, maybe longer. And that's because in July he's hitting 378. He has 3 home runs, 4 stolen bases. Walk rate's up to 17.5%. K rate is down to 21%. It does come with a 467 BABIP, which may be helping a little bit. But the walk rate is climbing. The K rate is dropped from 30% down to 21%. is Max Schumann also kind of joining the Lawrence Butler, future Hall of Famers from Sacramento.
What hat do they wear? Will they wear the Sacramento A's hat on their Hall of Fame flash?
I think they're gonna wear the Las Vegas Hearts hats. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So Max Schumann, actually, so he's an interesting one because for me, his stats look a tad bit better than Butler. Like he definitely doesn't have. I don't think he has as much power, but he seems like he has more speed, and he's got a bit better contact, even though he's older. So Butler seems like he has more upside, where Max Schumann seems to be like he is who he is, but there looks like a potential here for I mean, I could be interested in Max Schumann for next year, depending on how he looks in the second half. Again, just like I said with Butler, though, I don't see any reason why Max Schumann shouldn't be picked up at least for this year, or at least for right now. If in any mixed league, I think he's probably worth rostering. Unless your team is stacked, I guess. But he, like you mentioned, his numbers over the last month, he's been hot. There's no reason why he shouldn't be rostered. So yeah, I like him for right now. Debatable on big picture, but he does seem to me to have a little bit better of an approach than Butler. So I could see myself being a little bit more interested in him, next year potentially.
Yeah, I think I'm in on Butler right now, and I'm definitely in on Butler right now. And I think Schumann may be, despite kind of the age and how long he's been in the minors, which we're getting to the end of the forgiveness period, which, I've given a forgiveness period to a lot of the people who went through the COVID, season where the minors didn't happen, because that screwed up so many development timelines and just kind of screwed up all the minor league promotions in general for a little bit. I'm willing to give a little bit of pass to Schumann for that fact, although it is Oakland. It's like, who can't you beat out in Oakland? Why aren't you getting called up? But I feel like he might be what we wanted Gelof to be, like 15, 260. And it might be a little bit more legitimate than Gelof's was, which always felt a little fake, but if you put up the numbers, it's hard to ignore it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, exactly. And I think also, I think when you're making better contact like Schumann does, I think things can come a lot easier. And, the A's also, they could have potentially been, they could have been dragging their heels on his arbitration or just calling him up for who knows what reason. I don't hold it necessarily against him that he's older, because like you look at like Brent Rooker and he looks great. And why is he as old as he is? Like, why is he turning 30? It's like,
yeah.
So yeah, I like Schumann, enough. It's okay.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. So I think we're both putting these two into Sex Panther with some room to grow into scientific fact if things keep going, in a positive direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're like, I don't know. Oneil Cruz, Gray, he's up next for us. 320, 3 home runs, a stolen base here in July. I mean, it's a guy you obviously liked in the preseason. Are you ready to jump back in for the second half?
Oh man, I never jumped out, bro. I never got out, man.
No cruising along.
I've been in for a long time. Me and Oneil Cruz, bro, we're bunking together. we're BFFs in my own head. I think with Oneil Cruz, a really promising thing was his strikeout rate in June was down to 28.4%. If he can be a 28% ish, oh man, he's gonna be a superstar. Like, absolutely. The K rate has gone up a bit in July. he hasn't come out of the break. I think he struck out a bunch. So it's a little bit of small sample size with July, but it hasn't been, things haven't been necessarily terrific in his 3 games after the break. So kind of like, I think he's still a little bit of a work in progress, but I think he can get there. And if he can, he doesn't have to be at 22% strikeout rate. Like he could still be, 27 to 29, but it just gets a little bit on. If he can just get a little bit under 30, like we saw from him in June, like he can be really, he can be a superstar. I still absolutely believe in him. But yeah, it's gonna happen soon though, because his body, I don't know how well he's going to age once he gets to his 30s. So he's 25 now. He'll be 26 next year. Hey, look at me. I know age. I know how calendars work. But 26, 26, 27, 28. He's got about 3 years here. He needs to be be really good starting as early as right now. Right now. He's got so much, he's not hitting lefties great. He's still struggling against lefties. So there's some holes in his game still. So I don't think in my top 100 for the second half, I think he's probably I ranked him around 60-ish. I think he's probably in the 60 to 80 range overall. I'm obviously high on him because I like him a lot. But 60 to 80, because the potential for a huge, insane breakout is there. But I don't think we fully have seen it yet. He's shown glimpses. He showed glimpses in June. Heading into July, but he's definitely still a work in progress.
Yeah, I don't know that his current profile ages all that well either. It may be a little Javi Baez-esque if he doesn't get the K's under control. But It also seems like he just gets in the rhythm and finds his swing at times, and it doesn't matter that he strikes out, because everything that he's not striking out on, he's absolutely blasting. So I mean, I think that's more the path to fantasy relevance for the short term is just him getting in the groove for the second half. But I agree. If he can get the K rate down to 27%, there's going to be a lot of improvement just in pitch selection, and that also helps, the quality of contact that he's going to make too.
Yeah.
All right, Gray. So I'm just gonna say your scientific fact because you love him. Bias is all inside of that one. So, Randy Arozarena, July 293, 4 home runs, 4 stolen bases. I say he had 4 home runs in July, but really had 3 home runs in the last 2 games to start the second half. So he's really started the second half really hot. Is he going to make up for all the pain he caused in the first half for some other team that picked him up?
Yeah, I probably shortchanged him by not including him in my top 100 for the second half. I think he's probably he definitely came out of the gate awful. April, May were bad months.
He was too big, Gray. He couldn't get behind. He couldn't wipe. Is affecting things.
He looks like he's been fine now for about 7 weeks. He looks like he was just struggling in April, May. So I think he's probably, I think maybe we said that he was over before, he actually was over. I think he's proven he's not done yet. I like him. I like him again. He's going to come probably at a really nice discount actually for next year. I could see being in on him because he has come on lately. I also think that, he might be bad again next March, April, May. So it might be a struggle, to start next year. I'm not convinced that he is, he just might take a little time to heat up. I'm not convinced he's not done, but he's also not a 6-month season player from his stats, at least.
Yeah, no, I know, I hear you, Gray, and he may not be. And for what it's worth, I think traditionally he's been slow out of the gate. So like, it's not weird for him to be slow out of the gate. It was just this time it felt like the world was ending because he was not doing anything productive. He was trying to launch the ball every single time. The fly ball rate has gone down, and with that, he's kind of returned to what he should be, which is good because I told a lot of people to hold on that he was going to figure it out. So I'm glad that happened, Gray, and there weren't people just out there with him rotting on their roster all season. Zach Neto, 315, 2 homers, 5 stolen bases in July, Gray. He's kind of he was a low-key sleeper in the preseason. Is he back to being kind of a low-key sleeper again?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know why the Ron Washington is over there doing the devil's dandruff and not moving him up in the order. So it's like he's struggling to have decent counting stats. His numbers, though, like he looks like he's headed for, I'd say prorated, he's roughly headed for a 22 homer, 22 25, 22 homer, 25 steal, 255 season. That's basically that's roughly a top 10 shortstop, I think.
Yeah.
If he had the counting stats, it'd be a lot better, obviously, but I don't know. For whatever reason, I know the reason, or at least the reason it was said. He said that he moves him up in the order, and he struggles because of too much pressure. But he's hit leadoff 1 game. He's hit second for 2 games. He's hit as high as 5th for 1 game. Everything else has come the bottom, like 6, 7, 8, and 9, and he's hit mostly and 9 and 9th in the order, which is just like it's stupid. How do you take your best?
Gray, he's hitting 338 at 8th. He's clearly has to hit 8th. We can't move him up, Gray. The 1 game we put him at first, he didn't get a hit. The 1 game we did it, Gray, he didn't get a hit. Okay, we gave him his shot.
Yeah, man. So he's hitting 8th because he hits 338 as an 8-hole hitter. So that is brilliant. That is brilliant. That is brilliant logic. So
they're also platooning him versus lefties, Gray. Which is weird. He's a righty. They're platooning him out against lefties, of which he's hitting 418 against. So you tell me what's going on. Like you tell me.
He's hitting. So he's a righty getting platooned out versus lefties, who he's hitting 418 against. And he's playing against every righty, and he's hitting 228 against righties.
Hey,
what is going on, man? Oh my god! Ron Washington needs to be stopped, bro. He's just not a good manager. I don't. Sometimes like people are like they get a reputation for being, it's a player's manager. Like I don't care what they say. He's not. He's not good. The Angels are not a good team. He's doing about as best he can with them, but it's also not great. Like, come on.
Yeah. No, as much like I have given Dusty Baker so much crap over the years, but like Ron Washington is like I don't want to go drug related here, so I'm just gonna say poor man's version of Dusty Baker, but like it's a bad poor version. Yeah. Like how he got into a World Series is kind of beyond me. course, he also left his DH in right field, which also cost them said World Series. But that's probably a touchy subject.
I think at the end of the day, managers are like plus or minus like a half a game for baseball. I mean, after when guys are out there, they're either gonna hit or they're gonna pitch, or it's like only so much a manager can do. Like what are they doing? Late inning switches. It's like
I think bullpen. Bullpen is probably the biggest place they have any.
Yeah, I mean, right. Yeah, so maybe a couple game swing either way for managers, but in fairness to Ron, no one could do anything with what the Angels are putting out there anyway. But he could be hitting Zach Nato higher up in the order. Anyway, let's move on.
Yeah, we can move on, Gray. It's not worth spending the time on. I would say scientific fact on Neto, though. He may not continue his pace, but I feel like he's going to be a very useful, fantasy asset, if not your primary shortstop, like a very good middle infielder to have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so let's move on. Up next is Tyler Oneil. He had a 2 home run game on Saturday. I mean, he's been pretty solid when he's been healthy, Gray. I mean, is this more to come, basically? When he's in there, he's good, and not, it sucks.
Yeah, I mean, he's been fine. I've in a weekly league, I haven't even thought about removing him from my lineup in a 12-team mixed league weekly league, and I'm in first place in that league by a lot. And I haven't even thought about moving Tyler Oneil out of my lineup at any point. He's been totally fine. I don't know. I mean, he occasionally, I guess, gets benched in bad matchups, but if it's a bad matchup, so what? Let them take him out of the lineup. But yeah, assuming he's on the field and healthy, I like Tyler Oneil. So that's a scientific fact, I believe.
Yep, I think we got that one right. I mean, I feel like the ends are pretty self-explanatory, Gray. I don't know what else to do here for those. But yeah, I agree. Scientific fact on Tyler Oneil: when he's healthy, he's been good this year. He needs to stay on the field. And yeah, 0 for 0 is still better than 0 for 4, which is, unfortunately what he does sometimes. Although his splits haven't been as bad as they have been in the past this season. We basically just destroyed Juan Yepez last show, Gray. Do we need to reassess and apologize? Because in 13 games so far, he has a home run, a stolen base, 9 runs, 6 RBIs, and he's hitting 367, 436, and 571. For basis in AAA, he was hitting 263. So I don't feel like we do, Gray, but would you go ahead and ride this hot streak?
Yeah. I don't believe you. Is that an option? I don't believe you. That's an option, right? Okay. Yeah. I don't believe you. Maybe Sex Panther. I don't believe you probably, but Sex Panther maybe. So
yeah, I'm gonna just go with I don't believe you. I don't believe you.
Yeah.
For you, Yepez. If he does it, congratulations. It's got to be like only leagues. You can't be started. But
you can't. I mean, you can't deny a Sex Panther though when you see one. Like he's obviously right now he's a Sex Panther, but I don't believe you. Believe you is the big pitcher, Sex Panther for the small pitcher.
Yeah, so you're saying it's in the 60% of the time it works every time. I get it.
For right now.
Yeah. All right, great. A podcast favorite, Ty France. I don't know if we've ever owned him in any single leagues that we picked him off of waivers. He's been outrighted, Gray. Tyler Locklear has been called up to take his place in AAA this year. He's had 31 games, 4 home runs, a stolen base. He's hitting 264, 374, 455 with a 22% K rate, 11.5% walk rate. He did get 11 games in the majors earlier where he hit 200 with a couple home runs and a stolen base. Wasn't a great, first look for Tyler Locklear, but are you in on him as a flyer here when he in his second chance?
No. I mean, I guess if you're struggling for a corner guy in a deep league, sure. I don't know if he seems like he has a little bit more power than Ty France. I don't know if he's I don't know if he's necessarily going to be worthwhile in like a 12-team mixed league, for instance, but he could get hot and potentially get there. I think right now, you're looking at a guy who's more than likely, at best 15-team mixed league guy because of maybe you lost a corner man and you're struggling to make up one. I lost a guy called Tristan Casas. I don't know if anyone's heard of him. I lost him like 3 months ago. I don't know whatever happened with that. If anyone's seen Tristan Casas, just like point him in the direction of a baseball field and let him start hitting again, please. But yeah, Tyler Locklear for me, like I mean, I'd have to really be struggling in a mixed league to go for Tyler Locklear. Right now, as of right now, that is, if he starts hitting, then maybe I'll loosen up a little bit on that. But I would say 15-team mixed league at best, and AL only, obviously, but that's, goes without saying.
Yeah, probably only unless you're really desperate, but you can look at him if if you really need a corner man, as you mentioned. All right, great. Let's look at the bullpens. Kind of a trade addition here. Tanner Scott is, all of it expected to be gone from Miami. It sounds like Philadelphia might be the landing spot. Are you interested in any of the other arms there in Miami who, I mean, they could also be traded, but assuming Tanner Scott's first.
I mean, I'm not, people know I'm not a, someone just texted me about David Dahl. I don't know why would you text me that? What are you trying to say? Are you trying to say because I wrote a David Dahl sleeper post for 4 years in a row? Is that why you're texting me that? Anyway, I will say this: Tanner Scott. I'm not a Phillies fan, but Tanner Scott on the Phillies, that sounds really good for the Phillies. I hadn't heard that yet. You're telling me that for the first time. Anyway, Tanner Scott, I think, like, people are assuming, I mentioned this in my buy sell last week, my waiver wire article on Friday. I mentioned this, but to say it again for people who have really short-term memory, Tanner Scott's, the assumption is he's gonna go to a team where he's gonna become a setup man. Like the Phillies, he probably would be setting up Jeff Hoffman. But he might get some saves though as well. And that was sort of my point on Friday with Tanner Scott. Like if he goes to a team that is struggling, he could end up getting saves. Like it's not out of the realm of possibility that like he goes to the Yankees. Say he goes to the Yankees and Cole Holmes blows 2 saves in a row and Tanner Scott's lights out in the 8th inning. I mean, I would hope they would try Tanner Scott in the 9th inning. Or say Tanner Scott goes to the Dodgers and Evan Phillips has been struggling now for like 3 weeks. And Tanner Scott goes to the Dodgers, he would get saves in LA. So I don't know if the assumption that Tanner Scott's going to get moved and also lose all value, I don't know if I fully buy in on that assumption. And as for the Marlins saves, probably not going to be many, but I would guess AJ Puck.
Yeah, I think it's probably Puck or maybe Bender just because Puck's a lefty, but so is Tanner Scott, so I don't see what the issue would be other than, if you trade Scott, maybe it's just because you're down another lefty. But yeah, I would think those are the guys we're looking at there. And I agree. Like, even if he goes to the Phillies where Jeff Hoffman's been amazing, so that's Tanner Scott. Like, Tanner Scott's been really, really good. So just because he goes to a team that might have a closer doesn't necessarily mean that's happening. I mean, I think the Dodgers would make sense. And with Evan Phillips kind of fumbling, he could definitely step in right there and be the closer. So there's a couple places he could go and still keep his job.
Yep.
Oakland could trade anybody and everybody, but Mason Miller, for our purposes right now, is the name that we're going to discuss. If they move him, is there anybody you want for Oakland? I mean, we already mentioned they're scoring runs, which means there might actually be occasional save opportunities, Gray.
I guess it would be Lucas Urseg would be my guess, would be the closer to fill in, but I know I believe on Sunday he gave up like 4 earned. So yeah, I mean that's just one outing, and he's been relatively okay outside of that. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't go crazy. Honestly, I don't think I would be stashing Lucas Urseg, but
if
you're
going to be Mason Miller,
you're desperate.
Yeah. Carlos Estevez, maybe the only person from the Angels that anybody wants. He could be moved, Gray. He would likely. I'm just gonna say it. He's gonna be a setup guy if he moves, but he could definitely get moved. Anybody else that you want from the Angels if he does?
Yeah, I mean, Luis Garcia Senior. No, I don't know. Luis Garcia the third. No, the fourth. The fifth. Luis Garcia or Ben Joyce. I would probably prefer Ben Joyce, but I don't know. I would guess probably Luis Garcia.
Yeah, I mean, it could be either of those guys. I do think, Luis Garcia definitely could be moved. Hunter Strickland's been really good recently. He could get moved though too. So I think it's probably Ben Joyce that I would look at, but who knows? And it's the Angels, so I'm not even pretending to understand their thinking. We mentioned Evan Phillips. He's been struggling. It seems like he's out as closer, Gray. Is it Daniel Hudson, or is it maybe some kind of committee where if it's not lefties, it's Phillips, but if there are lefties, it's not? What are you thinking here in LA?
So I don't know if people caught the game on Sunday, but I would say that was really that was the final nail, really. Like, Evan Phillips looked like he was kind of sort of in the doghouse, but then on Sunday he came into a game that, it wasn't a save opportunity, but it was sort of an opportunity to save face, right? So, and he did not do that. He did the opposite. Whatever the opposite of saving face is, that's what he did, because he looked awful. He looked like he basically couldn't get anyone out, and he was walking people. I mean, it's just, it might be a mechanics thing. I don't know. I mean, he could be fine, like maybe down the road, but he definitely is not fine now. So I picked up Daniel Hudson where I could, because he felt like the most natural potential replacement. But Trinan could get saves, and also, like I mentioned earlier with Tanner Scott, the Dodgers have a lot riding on this season. I wouldn't be surprised if they added like a Tanner Scott or Carlos Estevez, maybe. I don't know if the Dodgers and the Angels really do trades with each other, but maybe Mason Miller. I don't know. But the Dodgers are not. I don't think the Dodgers are going to sit on their hands during the trade deadline and not try and get someone to replace Evan Phillips, because he does not look right.
Yeah, there's also been rumors of potentially a mega deal between the Dodgers and White Sox, which would include Kopech. So that would potentially be another option.
That sounds like you're just adopting someone else's headache, but yeah, I mean, maybe. If I were speculating on saves, I still kind of like Chad Green, and Yimi Garcia came back. So I would see, because the Jays are not going to acquire anyone, obviously. If anything, they're going to be selling people. Could they possibly sell Chad Green or Yimi Garcia? Yeah, I guess potentially. But one of them's going to get, they're going to get some saves. And one of them, I think Chad Green right now, I mean, both of them have been really good when they've been healthy. And Chad Green just got Sunday's save, 1 1/3 innings, I believe, with 0 earned. He looked great. I watched the game. I mean, Chad Green looked like he was unhittable. So And Yimi Garcia has been good as well. So I don't know who's necessarily the closer there with the Jays, but someone's going to get saves there, and it's probably going to be one of those two guys.
Yeah, I agree. Moving over to our must mention every podcast, Colorado. Victor Vodnik has gotten 3 saves in July for them. Is he now the closer in Colorado, Gray?
He goes by the name of Doc Ock. Victor Vodnik has a lair somewhere. Victor Vodnik is plotting to take over the world. Yeah, I mean, he's gotten saves for for basically July. His numbers don't really look very good, and I wouldn't trust him to pick him up in most leagues. NL only, I saw this week he got picked up. Finally, he got picked up in my NL only league, but I wasn't the one who did it, and I really wouldn't probably mess with him in a mixed league. But if you're desperate, you're desperate, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if you're chasing down every save, he could potentially give you a couple. Since he's gotten into this role, he's been pretty good. Outside of this role, he's not been good. I mean, maybe he's just one of those guys who can only be a closer. That seems very weird, but yeah, I mean, it's just like any other Colorado closer we've had all season. Take your risk if you want to, but it's probably a bad idea.
Yes.
All right, Gray, waiver time. Give the people some bats. I'll give them streamers. We'll get out of here.
Okay, cool. So we mentioned him earlier. Max Schumann, obviously been hot. Miguel Andujar, also for the A's. He's been hot. And obviously Lawrence Butler. I'm not going to name any more A's, but they've all been hot. Then there's actually a guy who I was hoping to actually talk about a bit more on the show. He's been hot. Gavin Lux. I don't know if he's, I wouldn't say necessarily breaking out, but there's something potentially, like he used to have a prospect pedigree. So I don't know. I mean, it's only been a few games. He hit 2 homers, stole a base. He's been hitting over 500 since the break. It's probably just a hot streak. But I grabbed Gavin Lux just in case it's more than a hot streak. I would suggest people do the same. Anyway, okay, moving on. Jake Berger, he's been hot. Thankfully, because who really, what is that? Steak tartare? Otherwise, I mean, come on. So Berger's been hot. Eric Haas hit 2 homers on Sunday. 2 homers usually leads to a hot streak, but we'll see. Tyler Fitzgerald has been hot since the break. Eddie Rosario, Colton Cowser, Jeff McNeil hit 2 homers the other day. Andrew McCutcheon, he also hit a homer the other day. He's been hot a little bit. Juan Yepez, who we mentioned earlier, also has been hot. David Hamilton stole 2 bags on Sunday, has been hot. And finally, Mickey Moniak. The Angels actually have a good hot bat. Okay, so yeah, that's the bats.
Yeah, that's pretty rare for them. Streamers, Gray, Andrew Heaney at Toronto, Kyle Freeland at San Francisco, Jameson Taillon versus Milwaukee, Hayden Birdsong versus Colorado, Ryan Nelson at Kansas City, Tobias Myers at the Cubs and versus the Marlins, Zach Eflin at Toronto, Trevor Rogers at Milwaukee, Osvaldo Bido as my deeper league play versus Houston, and at the Angels, he's getting a shot in the rotation. He's been pretty good out of the bullpen recently, so we'll see if that can carry over into the rotation. Gray, if anybody has any more questions for us, they can find us on Twitter. I'm at RazBeaton. You're, of course, the owner of the @Razzball account. You can find us in the comments section on razzball.com or youtube.com/Razzball Fantasy. Like, subscribe, rate, review wherever you listen or watch us. Until next week, Gray, good luck with your teams, and I'll talk to you later, bud.
All right, late.